And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking the Lando Norris Max Verstappen fallout for the race win at the Austrian Grand Prix. If you remember, on lap 64, Lando Norris, after several attempts, several dive bombs to be fair, and one very contentious Max Verstappen moving in the braking zone, Lando Norris then tries to go around the outside. Max Verstappen says no, hits Lando Norris. Norris eventually out of the Grand Prix with a puncture. Verstappen gets a puncher, a 10-second penalty, fastest lap on the soft tyres. These people were friends, are they now? Yeah, let's see. So, Max Verstappen versus Lando Norris. Was it inevitable? With McLaren being arguably the next fastest car, or the car at least as fast, or if not faster than the Red Bull. Was it going to happen anyway? Well, that's what we want to talk about. What is quite interesting is obviously Lando's take and Max Verstappen's take on the matter. Most telling, I think, and most interesting is Andrea Stella's take on this Norris-Verstappen fallout. But also Christian Horner's take, which I think is particularly interesting as well. So, let's have a listen as he speaks, I think, to Ted from Sky Sports.
Just looking to see, first of all, what happened at the pit stop, because we lost, obviously, a bit of time there, but then...
They did lose. I think it was it was a 6-second pit stop or something. And the issue being with that is it felt, in hindsight, almost like a Monza 2021 moment.
It didn't lose you the race, though.
No, it didn't lose us the race, but it put us in a compromised position.
It did.
Yeah, for me, it looked like there was enough space up there for Lando. And
now, I'm assuming he's talking about the actual incident on lap 64. Absolutely, there was not enough space there for Lando. Max had pushed him off. If you look at the footage, you look at it. Max Verstappen had Lando. Lando had nowhere else to go but off the track. There was no space. I get Horner sticking up for Max Verstappen. I get it. For a team boss, in some ways, he is absolutely awesome. He's going to stick up for you no end. But I think this one, is well, yes. Let's carry on, shall we?
He'd already had the violation with the 4 strikes of track
he did.
limits, but
and that's something that Red Bull also later regretted telling Verstappen. Maybe it wouldn't have happened like that had he just let Lando Norris by, for example. Maybe Red Bull would have, both of them would have ended up finishing the race.
One of those things. So we'll bounce back next weekend.
Was Max just not prepared to finish second today?
Oh.
Look, I mean, you've got hard racers, and I think that Lando was being pretty, he got his elbows out, and
he did. He did with the dive bombs. What's interesting, though, I think, about the dive bombs is Verstappen had already moved, I think, when he gave his first decent attempt in the braking zone, and Lando was like, oh my gosh, and he complained on the radio. Moving into the braking zone is quite dangerous. Max has later denied moving under the braking zone, but I think when Anthony Davidson, he did an absolutely fantastic rundown on it. The only way he would be not moving under the braking zone if he braked after 100 metres, and he would have been off the track, I think. So fair play. I'll take Anthony Davidson very much on face value there. So I think he moved in the braking zone. And Lando, at that point, I imagine, would have been like, oh my gosh, this is not good. And he felt like dive bombing was arguably safer than trying to go toe-to-toe with Max Verstappen.
There'd been contact before, with them. In the end, it cost both of them.
I mean, sometimes we've seen in the past, Max's hard racing, his characteristically hard racing, works for him. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yes.
It doesn't today, but you're cool with that as his boss?
Well, it's like he picked up a puncture. He got the penalty. I thought the penalty was harsh.
Hey, I thought the penalty was harsh. Once again, he's sticking up. He's sticking up for Max Verstappen. It would be interesting to see whether Christian Horner actually, really, honestly believes that.
That's racing sometimes. It's frustrating, particularly, here at this race. But
the home race.
But that's the way racing goes sometimes. We had incredible win yesterday. We were controlling the...
Oh, and then it pretty much goes on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just forward it now to when he speaks to none other than Andrea Stella.
Well, Andrea, the stewards have found that Max was responsible for the incident. Max has just called it. I don't know if you heard.
Yeah, so Max says, he got, as we mentioned, a 10-second penalty. The stewards were quite happy that it was Max's fault. But interestingly, there was some initial confusion about the penalty. The penalty was for Max Verstappen and the Lando Norris incident on lap 64 not moving, as far as I'm aware, and not moving in the braking zone.
On the radio, ridiculous, and Red Bull agree. They said that Lando was in part to blame. Obviously, how do you see it?
Yeah, I see that the entire population in the world would know who is responsible, except for a group of people. But the problem behind it.
Well, that's right. He said except for a group of people. I imagine he's citing Red Bull, essentially, that are, and that includes Max Verstappen, that are refusing to take any responsibility. We'll get into that in a bit. Which I think is quite interesting. Yeah, and he says that all the people in the world saw it. And I think when you look down, especially when you look at Anthony Davidson's breakdown of it, absolutely Max Verstappen's fault, this one, on lap 64.
Is that if you don't address these things honestly, they would come back. They have come back today because they were not addressed properly in the past, when there was some fights with Lewis that needed to be punished in a harsher way.
Now, he's talking ideally about 2021. How much has gone on? I think we've done a video about it, if it's still up as well, about not 2021, but the various incidents that Max Verstappen's been involved with over the years. Once again, very talented driver. And he's talking about the fact that it's not been addressed. Brazil 2021 wasn't really addressed whatsoever, even though there was more evidence when they got Max Verstappen's cockpit camera almost. You see he's straight, when Lewis tries to go for the overtake at Brazil, when they both really, let's be fair, they're almost in another postcode. Max Verstappen makes Lewis go so wide, and it's quite clear he could have turned a bit more, but he decides to, straighten out the steering wheel a tiny bit. Moments also in Abu Dhabi. Yes, Max was penalised for ultimately the brake testing, but none of the other things that have happened before. And Max Verstappen pushing Lewis off, I think, both in Spain, nearly having an accident, and the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in 2021 as well, but to name a few. And I think that's what Andrea Stella is saying, because we've let that slide, potentially this has happened today.
This you learn how to race in a certain way, which we can consider fair and square.
You're talking about Brazil 2021 here. I mean,
there's many episodes. Yeah. The fact is that
we
have so much respect for Red Bull, so much respect for Max. They don't need to do this. They don't need to do.
And that's what's interesting. Is he referring that Max is such a good driver, which I think he is? He doesn't need to do that. He just needs to rein back a bit and almost pick your battles. But yeah, I like the fact that he never gives up, kind of like a Kevin Magnussen. But I think, as with all things, there's a limit. And I agree with Andrea. If that's what he's saying, is Red Bull and Max are so good, they don't need to do this to be one of the best. And absolutely.
This is a way to almost compromise your reputation. Why would you do that? So
he's questioning, I think, Red Bull's Max's reputation now as well. I guess in as many words, suggesting that he may be he was wrong. Is he suggesting he's a dirty driver villain? I guess only Andrea Stella is going to know.
Well, I mean, we said, Lando, welcome to the world of Max Verstappen. He's uncompromising. We've seen uncompromising racers in the past. Michael Schumacher, who you used to work with. It's just the way Max races, which is okay. I mean, if that's what you want to, Max has won championships in that kind of racing, hasn't he?
I think the stewards found that Max was fully at blame in this episode. So it's
fully
not
at
about
blame.
Racing in a driver's way. It's about racing within the regulations. And the regulations must be enforced in a way that is effective. Because when a car is out of the race as a consequence of this accident, the punishment needs to be proportionate to the outcome.
Wow. I mean, it needs to be proportionate to the outcome. I think that is massively interesting there from Mr. Stella. It needs to be proportionate to the outcome. Lando Norris ended up retiring. I think because potentially when he got that puncture, too much damage was done. You could make an argument that Lando Norris ended up going back too fast, returning to because when your tyre is flailing, it's going to hit bits of bodywork, etc., and create such damage. You need to go at a snail's pace, but going at a snail's pace, he potentially would have been out the points anyway. So, but speaking of Lando Norris, he said himself, and this is from PlanetF1.com, he would lose a lot of respect for Max Verstappen if the Dutchman claimed he did nothing wrong in their dramatic collision. Now, as we know, they battled for the lead in the previous laps, but the pair came together on lap 64, turn number 3. In a move that eventually sent Norris out the race, Verstappen ended up finishing P5, that 10-second not really doing any damage to him at all. But visibly angry after the race, Norris admitted he would, and quote, lose a lot of respect for his friend Verstappen should he not concede at least some of the blame. So Norris and Verstappen are known, as you know, to be good friends off the track. The relationship was always likely to be tested, as we said, at some point. The first real flashpoint point between the pair came in Austria. The Austrian, as they were racing, the racing spilled over, both of them fighting for that potential victory. Speaking immediately after the race, Norris said he was looking forward to a fairer battle, but ultimately that never came. I'm disappointed. Nothing more than that, he said. Honestly, it was just a good race. I look forward to just a fair battle, a strong fair battle, but I wouldn't say that's what it was in the end. It's a tough one to take. It was a mistake-free race from my side, and I feel I did a good job, but I got taken out of the race. Well, he did do a couple of dive bombs. I think 2 in particular. One of them he did ultimately go wide. But anyway, before the incident, Norris was vocal on the radio, though, that Verstappen was moving under the braking. But what did Max have to say? Well, he said he wasn't aggressive in the clash. Max Verstappen denies he was aggressive towards Lando Norris. I mean, you took him out of the race. I don't understand this. This is like Lance Stroll-esque of disbelief towards Lando Norris in their 2024 Formula 1 Austrian Grand Prix crash, and that he was moving under braking throughout their battle. The pair collided as the final laps of the main event at the Red Bull Ring. It kicked off with Verstappen penalised for moving across on Norris's outside line attack at the track at turn 3. Now Verstappen, as I've said, was given a 10-second penalty as the stewards found him predominantly to blame for the collision. That opened up the door for, we haven't even spoken about it, but a George Russell win. Now, when asked about the contact by reporters after the race, Verstappen said he went back at it and felt 10 seconds seemed a bit severe for me at that point. And he added, because I didn't feel like it was super, like anything kind of aggressive going on in that moment. And of the 2 previous moments where Verstappen and Norris went off the track, the McLaren attacked Norris, dive bombed the turn 3, and the former felt the latter moving under braking against F1 rules. Now, in terms of the moving under the braking, Verstappen said, for me, it was not moving under braking because every time I moved, I was not braking already. Of course, from the outside, it always looks like that, but I think I know fairly well what to do in this kind of scenarios. I don't think you do, Max, because, okay, even if by some miracle you weren't moving under braking, you were still moving at the last minute when it was quite clear that Lando was like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to try and pass here. It was too late to do that, the one move that we all talk about. So he said also a few of those are really late dive bombs. Yes, they were. So it's a bit of just sending it up the inside and just hope the other guy steers out of it. Sounds familiar, Max? It's not always how you race, but I think just the corner here that lends that to that as well. Fair enough, Max. I've been in the other position as well, where you go for it and it just the shape of the corner. 2019 against Charles Leclerc when they did bump cars and he pushed Leclerc off and ultimately won the race. Yeah. He said, I think the move that we got together was something that I didn't expect. Is it because you thought Norris would move out of the way? I don't know. He said, I saw him coming, of course, so I defended a little bit on the inside, and then under braking we touched with the rear tyres. We both got a puncture from it, which of course is something you don't want to happen. No, it's not. In further questioning on the penalty being applied, Verstappen again highlighted his rival's attacking actions. He said, that's what I meant with the dive bombing, he said. It's just standing it up late and just hoping that the other guy steers out of it and you make the corner, which wasn't the case. Of course, you could say moving on the braking for me, which wasn't the case because I didn't brake when I moved. Okay, but it's also a bit like just sending it up the inside from far, which of course looks good. I like it as well, but sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And I think today that didn't work out. No, it didn't much. But then of course, like I said before, with the contact, we have it super unfortunate. Yeah, they get on well. He said we'll talk about it, but not now. Verstappen's fault. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen coming in to the British Grand Prix. So, if you like what you saw, you didn't like what you saw, comment below and let us know what you thought about the incident. Give us a subscribe, that'll be fantastic. Give us a like, that'll be even better. A thumbs up would be amazing as well. If you do all two. If you do all three, you are a triple world champion, I think, like the very talented Max Verstappen, yet potentially slightly too aggressive in Australia 2024 Max Verstappen. But Lando Norris, I think, the man that should have won the 2024 Austrian Grand Prix. Thank you very much.